Hello, and welcome to the Figuring Things Out podcast. Inspired by our favourite metaphor, each series explores various ideas around a given theme. This allows us to take a journey through a wide range of perspectives and travel towards greater clarity. For our first series, we'll explore the question, what is movement? And in the process, speak to 5 teachers, performers, and all-round wonderful humans. Okay, so today we have Mr. Josh, Mr. Strengthside, Josh Hash. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Will. Super excited, man.
Dude, thank you so much for being on. It's an absolute pleasure to have you the first one up. This is obviously a special occasion, Figuring Things Out podcast. I want to begin today with kind of discussing the idea and then giving you a chance to kind of dive into it. And then we're going to look at this question, this container that we're going to look at is, what is movement? Now, we both obviously know each other, so I want the audience to have a chance to kind of know you a bit better as well. So first of all, who is Josh? What is Josh doing?
Oh, Josh, the person Josh is, he's a guy who's into physical practice, but also looking at physical practice in the container of like, else does it affect my life, and what's the juice that we can take from it, and what are like the lessons that we can learn from it that help me grow and transform through my personal journey in this life. And that has kind of brought me to creating Strengthside about 10 years ago. And part of my journey is, through building this business of Strengthside and kind of teaching what I know and what's helped me along the way.
Sweet. So before we dive into Strengthside and your work and everything else, I love to kind of evolve this metaphor. So as you know, I love these ideas of images that portray or have a lot of information inside. And one of my favorites is a metaphor that I think you know, but maybe if you don't, this will be a nice question. How you understand the metaphor. So the metaphor is the 5 blind men and the elephant.
The elephant.
Have you heard
I
this?
knew you were going to say this.
Yeah?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea is this for the people listening. So basically you have 5 blind men or women or people walking through a forest or a jungle, and they meet an elephant. And the first one goes up to the elephant, feels the trunk and says, "Oh, I think it might be a snake." The next one comes up, touches the legs, and goes, "Oh, I think it might be a tree," and so on and so forth. And it's only when all 5 have kind of encompassed this elephant and brought their perspectives together that they see the overall picture and the clarity therein. So the idea for me for this podcast is to interview 5 individuals. You are my lucky first. And we're going to try and evolve this question of what is movement. So for you, what I would love to know first of all is, how do you see that metaphor? What is the meaning behind the metaphor to you, if it speaks to you at all?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, to me, I think the metaphor is like just on the base level that we all bring a different perspective to this life. And it's really influenced by all of our life experiences leading up to this point. We all have different backgrounds and we all become interested in different things. And then we get to this point of feeling the elephant, and we all kind of have a different angle of how we approach that. But like, to me, there's so much beauty in that. And I think one of the things that I love about being in more of this movement container is I like to see what other people are doing. And I like to almost like just become fans of people. And I think that's what's really powerful about the age that we're living, is that we can see so many different perspectives, and we can see how people apply that into their own practices and their own life kind of.
Yeah, I feel you there. So do you think you could define what is movement before we explore?
I knew this was the topic of your podcast, so I've thought about it a little bit, and I definitely have not come to a very good definition for myself. I think for me, like, what is movement has what I thought it was at one point in my life has changed a lot. And I think I thought that it was like being able to like be good at a diverse kind of range of skills and capacities and strength features. But now I just kind of like view movement as what we do physically, what we choose to do physically. And I think that looks different for each and every person. And the beauty, I think, of looking at things from more of a movement perspective is that you don't necessarily like count things out. It's like everything has its own validity. And I think that perspective has evolved in myself to really honor anything that anyone's doing with their body physically, and to that there's probably some value to be learned there.
So you put a lot of weight into the subjective, it sounds, the areas that maybe are less measurable. So how do you know that you're doing something that leads somewhere?
That's a good question. Yeah. How do we know that something's beneficial? I think that anything can be beneficial, because even if you don't necessarily like lead somewhere that you want to go, you learn from that experience, and then you can kind of be like, okay, I didn't get anywhere, but I actually really value what that experience did to me on like the subjective level. Or you say, you know, that was maybe I didn't get as much out of that as I wanted to. I didn't get anywhere, so I want to approach what I'm doing differently. But it's all just necessary feedback to keep moving forward and to keep kind of figuring out what the path you want to take is, I think.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So let's take a step back. Before you, let's say, reach this let's say personal philosophy that you're at right now, what were you doing beforehand? Because you said that you were maybe doing more objective or other types of practices beforehand. Can you maybe describe, first of all, the childhood Josh, what sports or activities he was doing, and then how that led to the whole, let's say, uncovering or finding of movement itself?
Yeah. So I grew up, my dad was a basketball coach at a university. So I grew up going to practices with him. I was sitting on the bench. I was like the ball boy. I was just around this those are my earliest memories. And I thought that being a basketball player was like the greatest, the coolest thing that you can do. I really like looked up to all those guys, and I can still kind of feel that like admiration feeling in my heart. And you know, that put me in this kind of track of like playing a lot of sports, you know, always valuing kind of basketball as my most important sport. And I played basketball in university. I also played baseball and football. And I just thought like team sports were like, that was what you do, you know, that was the best. But then I got done playing, and it was a bit of an identity crisis. Like now who is Josh? Now what do I do? So, you know, we had done a lot of strength and conditioning for basketball, for other sports. So that's what I kind of knew. So I was just like, all right, I guess I do this full time now. So then I became kind of a strength and conditioning junkie, and I got more into bodybuilding and powerlifting and this kind of training. And then I hit kind of the same roadblock of like, my identity is so mixed up in now, like how much I can lift and what my muscles look like and blah, blah, blah. So from there, I was very fortunate to stumble across a few people teaching like different ways of moving your body. You know, like GMB was one that I stumbled on early on, and then came across Ido Portal's work and just started to see, oh, like I don't have to be this thing that I built for myself, like this container, and I can get outside of that box. And then I can value different parts of a practice. I don't have to put all my eggs into one basket. And that was like, whew, that was like when I was just like mind blown, like really transformative time in my life, where I just started approaching things differently. My perspective started changing, not only in movement, but just like outside of movement. I started traveling a lot more. I started just valuing more, getting more into like valuing experience over what I had and the superficial parts of life and whatnot. But then once again, the movement practice then eventually became a thing that I was very identified with. And it was like, how good am I at these skills? And like, if I can't do, a stalder press, then like, I'm just shit, So, so then I think I had to go through another process of kind of blowing that up and like detaching myself in a way. And I think it's something that I'm going to be going through my whole life. I think for me, being physical, it feels so good, but inevitably it takes on a little bit of this, like, I need to do this to kind of prove myself. I need to do this to like feel like I'm valuable to the world. And when I start feeling myself drifting into that place, like I now I'm better at catching it, and I can kind of pull myself back and be like, no, this is a practice that I want for me, not to impress anybody else, but just to help me grow and help give my life more value, I think.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's it feels very palpable. We obviously worked together for 2 or 3 years, and something that was very clear to me was your ability to really accept the process, and you're really able to kind of take each step of this process in your stride, and you're never looking for too much or not doing enough. It was always, no matter where we went together, you had an ability to really accept that process. I think that's a really special quality. And I think that there's 2 questions I want to ask. The first one is that something from your father or your relationships with your brothers? Because I know you've got a tight-knit group there. And also, is there a process behind that process? Maybe like writing or reading or meditation, or something that really keeps you in your, let's say, in your style. I think you've got a very clear, like, hash style.
Thanks. Okay, can you say the first question in maybe a little bit different way? I didn't quite understand.
So do you think your ability to accept or take this kind of, let's say, ambiguous or subjective process in your stride, do you think that comes somewhere from your relationship or your let's say your basketball practice with your dad, or some kind of work therein, or maybe also with your brothers?
It's a really lovely question, because it's something that maybe I haven't thought about too much, but I think I think my parents, my father, they kind of ingrain this lifestyle of like having a physical practice, I guess. And despite what's going on in life, just kind of sticking to that process. And it's something that, I reflected on recently, that I'm really proud of the fact that, since I was like a kid, like I've always just kind of had something going on, and I've never just quit doing things altogether. I've never had to like get back into shape or things like that, because movement has just been a part of my life since I was really, really young. And that movement has looked completely different at times, but it's just kind of been a staple in my life, and not something that's hard really to do. And I know that for a lot of people, it is something that's very hard to stay motivated and to get themselves into a practice and just into shape and stuff. But for me, it's just a staple in my life, and I feel really fortunate about that. And I, after just reflecting on it right now, I would say a big part of that is like growing up with my dad, being around all these sports. Also, like, my brothers, kind of training with them throughout my whole life and keeping each other motivated and accountable and whatnot.
This podcast is currently a self-funded project. So if you're enjoying the conversations and would like to get involved and support us in creating more, please feel free to buy us a coffee with the link in the description. To see our coaching, courses, and event offers, please visit our website at www.figuringthingsout.com. For now, back to the podcast.
In that, let's say, reflection, you said the word reflection a lot. So are there cornerstones in your life that you like to rely on or lean on?
Yeah. Reflection is a huge one for me. I try to journal every day if I can. And I think just that's been such a big practice for me, writing things down, because before I did that, I think I wasn't really clear on like what was going on in my mind, for instance. But once I start writing things down, I can clearly see, okay, like this is clearly what I'm interested in right now. These are the things that are going on in my mind. And it sounds a little cheesy, but I've heard people say like you get to know yourself a little bit, you know. And I think there really is something to that. And I know that like I've also been influenced by you. I know that you do the first of the month reflections every month, and I would say I'm starting to do that a little bit more in a more formal way rather than just writing stream of consciousness, but actually sitting down and asking myself some questions. And especially at the start of the year, just like getting clear on like, how did this last year go? What was good? What did I not like so much? And then, you know, seeing how I can adjust what I'm doing now to hopefully be in a zone that I feel good about.
Yeah, really nice, man. So
yeah,
I guess that leads us to the next question, which would be something like, through that reflective process, you obviously come to some quite clear philosophies and some ideas, and you share a lot of them via StrengthSide, which is this amazing public free resource on YouTube. Can you tell us more about the process behind StrengthSide, and then also the message that you try and purvey via StrengthSide?
Yeah. So I mentioned writing and journaling, and one of the things that's kind of emerged over the last years is that I do really enjoy writing my ideas down. And after reflection, once again, I've kind of seen that like over the years, like it really is me kind of fleshing out my ideas on paper that make themselves into StrengthSide videos or make themselves into a concept that I want to talk about through email, or, you know, a new program that I think would be awesome for people to have. Right. And so I think that like StrengthSide really scratches a creative itch for me, because it's really like taking kind of the stuff that we're talking about from my personal practice in movement, kind of distilling it down to like, okay, what are like functional steps for people who maybe aren't living a lifestyle like me, that they can go train for 4 hours a day and do all these personal practices. But like, how can we get like the juice of it and then share it with the general public and people that just want to move more and want to do better, but, you know, don't have the time to sit around and think about it all day. And and yeah, and then I think one of the big messages of StrengthSide that's emerged for me is that we should really follow our interests. And I'm really big on like pushing people to not necessarily just follow what the status quo is, not just because this is what's popular on my homepage of YouTube Fitness, that this is what I should be doing. It's like, where are passions for you? What's something that interests you? And then to go and like get in that and like learn that. And yeah, that's kind of become a big StrengthSide philosophy.
Yeah, I love this. This is something that I think is both the beauty and the devil in movement. This whole idea or this whole ideology or culture is that it promises so much, but it becomes so overwhelming so quickly. I think it's always very hard. I work with students a lot on refining goals and refining projects, and really trying to simplify things to those, like you said, those passions, as opposed to the thing that's kind of cool on TikTok or Instagram or something.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's really difficult for us as teachers, as well as people coming up and as learners, as practitioners, or as people that are just looking to kind of move and enjoy their physicality. It's really hard to choose what to do. Do you have any advice or tips or things you've learned along the way about how to choose or dive into passions and how to trim them away?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the first thing I think is following what feels good in your body. And I think, okay, speaking from like a male perspective, as a young man who wasn't quite in tune with his emotions and didn't know really how to express himself, had a lot of self-consciousness, this kind of drove me into like, oh, well, like lifting heavy weights is almost like an armor to put on, and just to be like, this is me, like, this is how I want the world to see me, this really strong guy. But I got the message over and over again from my body that things weren't working very well. I had injuries, I had stiffness. And so like, if I was in tune with listening to my body back then, I would have maybe developed some other practices. But back then this is like 12 years ago, I did not know how to listen to my body at all. So I kept at it until I had a big knee injury, which kind of forced me to stop. But I think number one is listening to what feels good for your body, because that's what we're all after. Like, we're all after just good feelings. We want to feel strong and healthy, but also able to move well without restriction. So if your practice is pushing you in a different direction than that, then I think it's a good time to stop and reflect on how we can get ourselves on a better track. I would say another thing is just not to like write off something that interests you that you think that you can't do. If there's like, you've always been really fascinated by, I don't know, breakdancing or climbing, like go out and learn. There's people that want to teach you no matter how old you are. There's people that there's good communities there. These are usually like the most friendly communities, that people that want to welcome you in. And then the final thing that pops into mind is to do it socially, to create friendships around the movement that you're doing, to train with people as often as you can, and to like have fun figuring things out together. Because I think that's like that's something that's ingrained in our human nature, that feels really good when we do it.
Very much so. Figuring things out together, indeed.
That's right.
That's great. Plug away. The last one especially really speaks to me. I think both of us, obviously, we're working somehow online. And one of the things that inherently lacks is that social connection, like palpable in-person social connection. So one of the things that we've both spoken a lot about is kind of community and social gatherings or workshops or classes. And it was lovely to have you over in London and share in that. And then you also began teaching some workshops or kind of pop-up things in America, right?
Yeah, we had one big workshop last fall that was really awesome, and it was a bit influenced by being over in London with your group. And we did like a day of instruction and teaching and learning, kind of in more of a training gym atmosphere. And then we did a day that was kind of open container, go for a hike, play at the park, and so I go to a climbing gym here, has good training facilities, and then do some bouldering there. And I meet people all the time that know me from Strength Side. And it's always like a bit of like, oh, wow, you're that guy on YouTube. I watch your stuff and da 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 da. And it's like, but then it's like we get over the fact that like I'm this guy on YouTube, but then it's like, hey, do you want to train together? Do you want to talk about some training? You want to go try to figure out this bouldering problem? Like, I'm just a normal dude, and like I really enjoy just interacting and having fun, and I'm willing to be in a position, I meet people at the bouldering gym who are climbing 5 grades ahead of me, but they're like looking at me like I'm some I'm somebody, right? Because I'm on the internet. But I'm like, no, you teach me. Like, I want to learn from you, right? And I think it's really powerful to always be in that learning role.
So much, dude. I think that's your superpower. It's really that humble nature you've got to really be able to soak everything up. And it's something we're in London. Even the first day we met, I think in London, we're in the market, and like 2 or 3 people come up. Oh my God, are you that guy? And it's amazing and like incomprehensible for me to kind of see you just kind of take that in your stride, be so lovely to every single person, communicate as if they're, worthy of all of your time in the world, and then try and take something away from it. I think it's so cool to see. And I think to add to your list of tips for practicing and learning, let's say, I think that's definitely a big one, is stay humble and be able to stay in that role of being able to take things on. I think it's a superpower.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I will add, like, I'm super fortunate with StrengthSide that just anybody who's ever come up to me and said that they know me is usually like a just super cool person, like really down to earth, and like nobody like bothers me or anything. It's really unbelievable. Like, I've never met somebody who I was like, oh, that was a little clingy or something. Like, it's always just been like, wow, cool. I'd hang out with this person in everyday life, just be friends.
Has it ever played in your mind that like I dare to say fame or the notoriety? Has it ever been in there? Are you conscious of it, or is it really easy for you to kind of work and stop work?
Yeah, it's become such a weird thing, like StrengthSide growing a lot, because like I'd be lying if I said I wasn't attached to the business growing now that it has, but it's something that is very similar to what I talked about earlier with my personal practice, about kind of getting a little bit too invested in a goal and wanting this thing so badly to show something outside of myself. And the same thing happens with StrengthSide all the time. It's like, oh man, like a couple videos did really good and things are going really well and subscribers are coming in, and that feels really good. But there's always a swing back the other way into like, wow, things have really slowed down. Wow, are people even watching our videos anymore? Like, I don't, maybe like we're just gonna stop being relevant on YouTube now. But because I've been through those swings of like multiple times now I'm just, I'm kind of a bit more relaxed, just like whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And there's going to be some positive growth areas, and then there's going to be some downsides. And that's just life, right? Like that. That's how it always goes. Yeah. It's the process. Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So a minute ago, you mentioned injury, and you mentioned you mentioned a knee injury, but I want to speak a bit about a more recent one, the kind of foot ankle injury, something that we experienced together doing parkour. And I'd love to know a bit more about your ability to accept that process, because I think it's very easy to accept a process when things are going better or moving forwards, let's say, but it's quite difficult when you have something like an injury that really knocks you back. And then, I mean, for you had a really rough time with it. Maybe you can explain the injury, what happened, and then kind of your process through that, because I think you came out of it really strong, even though it was rubbish for a long time.
I finally came out of it strong, but it was a year or maybe over a year, how long it took. But the initial injury was just like a really bad ankle sprain. Like, I actually sprained both the sides of my ankle. But essentially, what happened was a tendon dislocated, my peroneal tendon on the side of my shin. And as the ankle healed up and got stronger again, that tendon didn't, and the tendon was dislocating and sliding out of place. And every time that happened, it was just my ankle would give out and be instability. So I was going for like a year until I recently had surgery back in November, and got it fixed up. But I would say like most of my 2022 was it changed my trajectory of what I was doing. I was working with you, and at the time of the injury, I think I was kind of peak like exploration. Like I was loving parkour. We were doing a lot of microbatics dance work, and I was also really like pushing some of the gymnastic skills as well at that time. And then the ankle thing came, and it really quite humbled me. I went through a very low time where I was really trying not to be low. I was trying to find the benefits and find the value in this injury. But man, like reflecting back, sometimes you don't see how low you were until you look back on it. But I would say like the benefits came a little bit later in the year, where I was like kind of just starting to ask myself like, okay, like if my ankle never really gives me what I want out of it again, then like, how do I approach my movement practice, and what makes me feel good? Kind of back to that question of like, how can I feel good about my physicality? And I kind of just like got back to some basics of just like, wow, doing a little something every day makes me feel good. Being strong makes me feel good. And I got to a place where I accepted it, I think. But then I had surgery, and things got repaired. And, this year has been really fun because I've gotten back to doing some more high impact training and being able to explore again and stuff. And that's just felt amazing. So it was a long process, but I definitely learned some lessons there. And now it's like I appreciate more what I'm doing right now with a bit more of a dynamic practice.
Yeah, I think also from my point of view as your coach, when you do have someone that gets injured, it's really like, oh, okay, let's see how they'll pivot. And I think you did a great job immediately of pivoting and kind of saying to me, hey, this is the situation. Here's what I can't do, but here's what I can do. Let's dive into that. And it meant that you kind of, rather than feel sorry for yourself and focus on the things that you weren't able to do anymore, you really were like, okay, let's dive into this, and this, because that's what I can really do right now. And that's going to allow me to put my energy into this direction right now. And I think that was really, really nice to see.
Yeah. I think we're all faced with that when we get an injury of like, we can go in depression mode and we can just stop training because we're so mad that we can't do the thing that we really want to do. And trust me, like I know when there's just something that you're like, I just want to do that thing, but I can't. But there's so much value in just finding some things that you can do. And who knows, maybe that totally changes your trajectory. Maybe you find that switching and doing these other things actually feel better for your body, actually feel better for your mind.
Right. And I think some of the things you changed to were actually almost a revert as well. As you said, we were working a lot on the exploration type material. And then as soon as the foot and the ankle came into the picture, you took up a few different projects, and they were almost like, reverting to more stable, linear, static type things. Like the shoulder press project, for example, we did some like more like pulling, hanging, almost like building your body and the upper body and the capacity, and really getting that to an interesting place that we wouldn't have if we were just focused on the exploration, which I think
yes.
In hindsight for you, was that an interesting phase, a positive phase, or was it like, yeah, I did that and I dealt with it the best I could and I move on?
It was a positive phase because it, like you said, like I brought up some things that I don't think I would have been able to bring up with putting so much energy into like some of these more explorative practices. And I think I was really going into that direction where I was like, maybe I stop strength training, or maybe I only do some strength work like once a week. Because I was just really enamored and having fun with these practices. But I think like overall, like where I'm at now, was really like that time was really beneficial for me. Like I built up a bigger base, and now like starting to kind of get a little bit deeper into more explorative stuff again, kind of like better maintained for these practices, I think.
And so it kind of sounds like we've almost got these two sides, these dichotomy of practice. We have this more explorative kind of open form type exploration, and then this more kind of structured objective side of the practice. In your current practice, now you're kind of, I believe you're more or less doing things by yourself. What percentage do you think sits on in either camp? Could you define that, do you think?
Yeah, I think for me it's very seasonal. Over the winter, it was a lot more in objective structural practice. And now with the weather getting nice again, we're hitting this spring. It's definitely starting to go the other way. I'd say right now, maybe I'm like 50-50, but I feel myself pulling more into just explorative practice and more moving freely in this subjective practice. And for me, like I'm very driven by the sun, I think. And yeah, the sunshine just makes me want to go out and play. So I'm giving myself that right now, but I'm constantly keeping an eye on it, right? Like I don't want, I think for me, it's very valuable to have both. And I want to keep both in my practice as much as I can. Yeah. I'd love to ask you the same thing, if you don't mind me turning it around on you.
So like I was saying when we were off air, I really am trying to keep myself to be the questioner and not have this kind of like conversation. I'm so eager to just say stuff, and I'm really trying to not, but I appreciate the question. I'm very similar. I'm very, very similar. I love being outdoors whenever I can. I love the practice of climbing and being in nature right now. It's something that challenges me in a number of ways, but also affords me a lot with meeting other people, trusting other people, forming relationships therein. But I do also love practicing, like physically practicing indoors. I have the movement hub in London. I have plenty of climbing gyms around, and I do enjoy being in those environments also. And I do still spend a lot of time in there. And the question that was coming into my mind when you asked me that question was, do you ever find it hard to drop a certain project or a certain period to move into the next one? Or is the transition pretty easy for you? Because sometimes I really find it difficult to, like I'm deep in a project and I'm training whatever, like a certain strength goal through the winter. And then it comes around now, really for me in the UK, around May time, you really start to feel the spring coming through, and it's, oh, we can get more and more time outdoors. It's exciting. How do you find that switch or that transition?
Yeah, I find it easier now. Back in the day, not back in the day, even just a couple of years ago, a few years ago, I think I was just so attached to the goals that I was going after. For instance, like strength training, but then the weather, wanting me to come outside and explore more. But now I see that some of these goals that I set for myself, they're more just like markers to push myself into the future. And whether I attain 3 reps of something or 2 reps, nobody cares. and I care, but I'm getting to the place where I care less. So that makes it kind of easier to drop a certain goal nowadays and to just like go after more of the feeling-based practice. I did want to mention, because I think what pertains to this conversation is, so when I started training with you, maybe, I don't know, 4 years ago now, being, let's see, how do I want to phrase this? I started looking at things more in a project mind frame, right? And I think that maybe for you that's influenced by climbing, maybe, but I really like this idea of taking on projects of and those can be a project that's more objective based, like a strength training project, or it can be a mobility project, or figuring out how to do a new skill, an acrobatic skill, or something in parkour or whatever. But I really loved this phase where I had a strength project, a mobility project. I think we were doing maybe like a dance style project, and then a parkour project. And it was like every day of the week that I was training, I was doing something that felt different in my body. And the reason I thought of this is because talking about strength training and capacity work, like getting to a goal or like improving there, it feels really, really good, but it feels much different for me than like doing a new jump, breaking a jump in parkour or something, right? Like those, they're the same. They're like attaining something new, but it's a completely different feeling. And I think that that's maybe something that general population doesn't get to experience so much, because it's usually we're just doing like one thing. We're going to the gym. We're like maybe doing just some general lifting stuff. But is really fulfilling experience just to like experience different qualities of movement in your body, and then experience what getting better at those things also feel like.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think this exactly hits on the question of what is movement. I think it's really highlighting what is missing from the, let's say, the general fitness population, and how it can enhance or enliven someone's life. And that's really the beauty or the value therein for me of this ambiguous topic of movement is, can I enhance my life experience? And as you said, my life future. And I think this is really nice to say, there's so many qualities available to us. It doesn't have to be static and rigid and plugged in, let's say, in the mirror. That's maybe part of it, and maybe a valuable part for some people, depending on your needs and your wants. But there's also a side of things that are a lot more expressive or fluid or explorative or dynamic or soft or slow or scary. I think one big factor and quality that I love from climbing is it does really take my like self-regulation into question. Can I regulate to a certain level when I'm stressed out and a bit afraid? Can I trust myself, and the things that I'm practicing in a capacity level, can I then apply them and commit? And I love to kind of work with that with students in person, is that kind of subjective realm of, okay, let's do this task. And it's a very simple task. It'll be whatever it may be. But can we dive deeper and look at the layers beneath it? And it might mean, can you really trust your partner right now and really commit to the task at hand? Can you feel yourself getting stressed out and take a step forward and see how that feels? And those types of things are really powerful, because they speak to that kind of meta level of, yeah, I'm just being physical, I'm just moving around, I'm just doing my thing. But, and then there's the depth. And I think that's what a lot of us, from my perspective, a lot of us that were drawn to movement from the very early days, or 10 years ago or so, it's really the depth of meaning therein in our lives. And
I agree.
The variable meaning or the variable experiences in life that brings.
Yes, I agree.
So let's shut me up. I want to talk about a little bit towards your scrambling, because right now I saw some amazing clips of your local area. You're living currently in Colorado, I believe.
Yeah.
And you recently took a good friend of ours, Dom, out scrambling and exploring the local nature. I want to know what part of your life or your practice does that feel? Does that give you something? Or
Yeah. So I'm living in Boulder right now, and there's the flat irons. Anybody familiar with this area knows the flat iron. So we did a little scramble up the second flat iron that you can do without ropes, and it's a bit, it's very doable, but there's certain parts that are a bit scary, and you're a bit exposed up there. And if you make a wrong move, then it wouldn't turn out too well for you. But I think maybe 5 years ago, I was so invested in just training and just like getting better at things, and like wanting to know more skills and be stronger. But at some point you just kind of like realize, like, what's all this training for? What are we doing? Just becoming a gym junkie maybe. I think for me, it's easy for me to fall into that realm there. So nowadays I'm just trying to like get myself outdoors as much as I can, do things with people, go on hikes, go on scrambles. And yeah, this just like, it's putting myself in real life situations where I'm with people, I'm having good conversation, I'm developing relationships, but we're also like doing something physical. And sometimes that, if that thing is a little bit scary, then, you know, there's usually more benefit on the other end of it, or at least like a feeling of accomplishment.
And also maybe a depth of relationship in with people around you. I think normally you can play, I love playing frisbee, for example, or throwing a ball around. You know, we've done it a few times. It's always really nice, and I thoroughly enjoy that. That's something that me and my dad did so much when I was a kid. But there's something a little bit different about just doing something that makes your heart rate rise in a way that's less controllable, maybe, or something that it feels inherently abnormal or unsafe, and you really have to be in the moment. You can't daydream necessarily. You're really present, and it's really special.
That's it. Yeah. Really present. There's a little bit more of an unknown factor there. And I think that's what makes it special. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Okay, so let's move away from death-defying acts and actually look at the future. I'd love to know, you mentioned a lot about kind of, you reflect quite a lot, and you think on things quite a lot. And I'd love to know what's in the future for Josh. Like, Josh as the person, Josh as the family man, Josh as the person away from the internet. What's the 3 or 5 year plan? Do you have one?
Yeah, so some big things coming up in my life. Chrissy is pregnant with twin boys, which is crazy and exciting and scary, but there's huge changes coming along the way with that, and I'm very excited for it to kind of take on this new chapter of my life. Along with that, we're also going to be opening up an HQ for Strengthside. We actually like just signed a lease on a warehouse space that just happens to be like bigger. It's bigger than what I was originally looking for, but it just happened to be that was kind of the only thing on the market right now, and we couldn't really find anything that was more in the square footage that we're looking for. So now we have this big space that should be really, really awesome. And I think it should lend itself to doing more in-person work, doing some workshops, maybe doing some classes, and also just having like a great space to train in for me and the Strengthside team and my friends, and to like feel really good to make videos and stuff, because man, I've been doing Strengthside from my house all these years, and I think with two babies in the house, it might not lend itself to the most creative, structured work environment. So 2 things that I'm really excited about that I think are gonna change my path a bit and change how I'm thinking about things. I'm excited to see those changes. I don't know what those changes will exactly look like, but I think I'm kind of stepping into a new chapter. I've heard people say stepping into the second half of life, and I feel that vibe right now a little bit.
Wow. All right, man. I'm really happy, proud, and excited for you. It's really cool. It's a dream.
Thank you.
So the HQ will be in California or be in Colorado?
Yeah, California. So we're actually moving back to where I grew up in Humboldt County, California, up north in the Redwoods. And yeah, that's where we signed the lease. It's actually like a nice, right now it's the warehouse space there is affordable. It's very affordable. So like it just all kind of came together, like, cause we kind of wanted to do one here in Colorado where we were living, but just wasn't the most accessible for us. And then going there, it's like, oh wow, there's like all these spaces that are definitely in a good range. So yeah, it's going to be a big change because back to California, but it's also back to my home where I grew up, where I feel really connected to and at ease, I would say.
Wow, man, that's great. And so
yeah,
the HQ will be primarily your kind of filming and team home gym, or will it also be a public space that you'll have people coming in and renting, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, definitely mostly just filming studio for us, training studio, workshop. And then we'll see how public access goes. Like we'll see how it feels to do maybe starting with a weekly class, and then see if we feel like that would be nice to grow that into more. And I don't think it's not going to be like a public access gym ever. But classes would be great. So yeah, we'll see how that feels.
And you feel motivated to kind of not only have this creative kind of internet project, but you also feel like you want to teach more in person then? Or would you also get other people in to help you coach?
Yeah, I feel like I do want to teach more in person. I really enjoyed doing our workshop last fall. And I think doing the internet stuff for so long, it's been amazing. It's afforded me a lifestyle that's really, really cool, but I miss being with people in person more. And I'm excited to maybe, because there's also some creativity that goes with that, right? You know this more than anyone, that maybe just designing what type of class I want to run, like maybe it's teaching a handstand, but then what else can we pair with a handstand that would be kind of interesting for people? And yeah, I imagine that there's a lot of value in making making a good experience for people, I guess I'm trying to say.
For sure. Do you think, on that note, that let's say your philosophy or your ideas will change from strength side and what you put out publicly on strength side compared to the more, let's say, semi-private classes you would do or workshops that you do in person?
I'm definitely open to that, for sure. I'm open to that being a little bit different. And I would say that, doing our workshop last year, things were different than our YouTube, what we're teaching on YouTube. And we really wanted it to be, because it's like, hey, if you're just coming to this workshop and we're just going to teach you a bunch of stuff that we've already shown on YouTube, then what's the point, right? So we're more so trying to make an experience for people. I think we're more so teaching some things that maybe don't work so well in like a public video. Take, for instance, like playing a game with a tennis ball, right? That doesn't really translate to a video so much. I don't think you can understand like the benefits or just like the value of experience of a game like that over video. But when you do it in person, you get this like, oh, wow, this is so fun. And that actually was, for most participants, their favorite part of the workshop, was when we more did games and stuff that, you don't see on the Strength Side YouTube channel.
Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that it was their favorite part?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think is the most unique experience. I don't think people are getting much of that in their daily life. And, if you go to the gym, then you definitely can get lots of strength training experience or stretching experience. But, just playing a almost silly game with someone and like sharing a laugh, like that's really rare for our day-to-day experiences right now, I think. So getting that through a class, I think, is incredible,
Yeah, very much so. Let's go back to Josh. So I think you'd agree, each of us change so much in life, and constantly there's moments that change us. And obviously you're talking about the next few years for you will be massive with the babies coming along and business changes. But I'd love to know, in the last year or two, what do you think changed in you the most, and why?
We've touched on this a little bit already in this conversation, but the thing that changed the most in the last couple of years is switching from really wanting to prove myself through my business and my personal practice to, you kind of said it, like maybe being more of a family man, being more dedicated to my relationships and my experiences with other people, and kind of building a stable home and a family. And for years, like, I love just having no what's the word I'm looking for? Having no attachments, and being able to like travel a lot and just being able to spend my days out in a park training. And I didn't have a lot of things and stuff like that. And it was a great period in my life. But in the last couple of years, I've been like, okay, now I want a home, now I want a place that feels really safe and comfortable and stable for me. And I want to really commit to, my relationships and being a good boyfriend and friend and son and brother and whatnot. And yeah, it's been a huge transformation. And kids are on the way, so it's worked, I guess. It's you could see that I'm there.
Yeah, something worked.
yeah.
So I would love to actually draw you away from yourself. So I love that you're endlessly positive, and you're able to turn almost everything into a positive. And I'd love to ask you, is there something you hate? Is there something you really dislike, or something that's like a bit of, we say in England, an it? Something that's like, oh, damn it. Why?
Let's see. There are things that I am a very positive person, but actually, just speaking about that, I've noticed in the last couple of years that I tend to sometimes get a little bit more angry and go to more of a negative place sometimes, and get really like frustrated with people sometimes, and and I go back and forth on that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, why can't I be as positive as I used to be? And but then sometimes I think it's actually like what needs to be expressed. Like there's a bit of anger within me, and letting it out actually probably is better in the long run than keeping things bottled up,
How do you let it out?
Just kind of, let's see, how do I let it out? Yeah, sometimes just simply just letting out a little like frustrating sigh, or like, what is that about? And and then I think also just like giving myself space to just like feel it a bit, and not to just move on right away to something, just to be like, yeah, man, why does this bug me so much that this thing sucks. But yeah, with that, I think, or so, but you also asked me just like anything that I hate. And I think like sometimes I see things in the culture nowadays that I just dislike, like a lot of this like alpha male hyper masculinity stuff that's being thrown around on the internet these days. It really bugs me. And especially like relationships to women. And I think that if you approach like relationships with thinking that like the opposite sex really just like wants something from you, wants to use you, then of course that's what you're going to attract into your life. And sometimes I see like this content about these types of things because they're becoming more popular, of how to be the real alpha male. But it's like, just if you're a loving person and you want like good for yourself and for other people, then you're going to attract that, and life's going to be easier, I think.
I feel you so much, bud. Yeah, I really do. So actually, I think this is a nice segue to talk about, or to ask you, do you have any tips for your younger self, or for young people listening? I think this is an interesting subject to kind of broach it through or via.
So the biggest tip I'd give to myself, 10, 15 years ago, is to be more open, and to be open to your interests changing, and to not become too dogmatic about one thing. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest things I see with people that are younger, is like, maybe you just have less life experience. So you think like this thing in front of you is the thing, and this is the thing that's going to change your life, and everyone should do it. And it's just simply not the case. There's going to be a lot of things along the way. And I think the less that you get so invested in something, the easier it is to start seeing how there's a diverse amount of activities and things that can really change your life, and to explore the ones that are interested to you.
Amen. So the first part of the podcast, I kind of explained this metaphor and this idea.
Yeah.
Do you have any quotes or metaphors that you love, or you stand by, or you find interesting?
Well, the first one that pops in my mind actually is one from you. The thing is bigger than the thing. Yeah, I've always had that. I think is what initially attracted me to want to work with you, is because that's how I've always felt. And then just such a like simple little saying like that, like the thing is bigger than the thing, it just really just sums up like a lot of what we're doing in movement practice, but just life in general. Like you do something, but there's so much behind it. And I guess the other one that I always attach to the thing is bigger than the thing is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I don't know who that quote is from exactly, but I catch myself sometimes being lazy or being sloppy about certain things. And I think that can carry over into everything you do, right? So actually this is I just had this nice conversation with this guy that I've been training parkour with lately, and we're talking about how in parkour it's kind of like this, it's almost like this agreed upon thing where you say you're going to do one more, and that probably means you're going to do like 5 more, right? Like you're like, I'm gonna give myself one more go at this. And then that one, like you don't quite get it, but you're like a little bit closer. So you're like, okay, actually let me do another one. But, and like I do it, everyone does it, I think, but I think there's a lot of value in holding yourself accountable to your word. Cause it's like, if you say you're going to do one more and then you do 10 more, like how's that going to carry over into, you say you're going to have one cookie and then, but you're accustomed to letting yourself go further and not holding yourself true to your word. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot more lately. It's like, if I let myself indulge in this one part of life, or if I don't stick to my word, then like that's going to carry over into other parts. So sticking to your word. I mean, I think that's like a Jordan Peterson thing as well, that I think just has so much value.
Yeah, I love that. That's my dad's favorite. So that's a perfect little sign off. I'd like to bring us full circle, and thank you for that. It's perfect. So obviously, the beginning of the conversation, the podcast, we started to delve into this question: what is movement? And I said to you, can you define it? And it's always really hard to define something so ambiguous and broad. But maybe now we've kind of mumbled, jumbled, moved around it a little bit, and you've kind of got a few more things out, and maybe, who knows, some things have started into place. Are you able maybe now to define it based upon what we've been talking about, or at least give a clearer definition or a working definition?
I would say no. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe we could get a little bit clearer. I think movement is what you choose to do to guide yourself through learning and hopefully growing in certain aspects of your life. I think it's important to say that there's no limitations on what that can be.
Beautiful. Mr. Josh Hash, Springside, thank you so much. That was special, very special indeed. I
Thank you, man.
Honored to have you on as the first guest.
I feel honored to be here as the first guest. It's a pleasure, and yeah, I mean, all our conversations I love. So this is nice to have one recorded.
Thank you so much, bud. Where can everyone find you if they don't know you already?
StrengthSide on YouTube is usually the easiest way to go about it, and we have links in all our descriptions if you want to check out more of our stuff.
But thank you so much. Have a beautiful morning.
Thanks.
I'll speak to you soon.
Hi, I'm Will Brown. Thank you so much for listening. It's really a joy to have these conversations. Please feel free to like and share as much as you wish. It really helps us. And also keep an eye out for next week's release, where we interview yet another wonderful human. Again, if you'd like to see our coaching, courses, and event offers, please visit the website www.figuringthingsout.com. See you next time.